Welcome back to the All Things AI podcast. I'm your host, Ishan, and here with me today is Jenk Oz, the founder and CEO of Thread Media. He's one of the faces of Gen Z and has created a bridge with every other generation in corporate and cultural spheres like none other. Jenk, it's a true honor to host you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. Let's get into it.
And I've been looking forward for this too. I mean, I know you were in Columbus a couple weeks ago, just a few hours out of where I am in Cleveland, Ohio, and it feels crazy that I guess you were like almost right here. And but I'm really happy to talk to you. I mean, and ask all these questions today. But yeah, so I really want to like get started with talking about your journey to begin with. So from iCoolKid at like 8 years old to Thread and Thread Media, please tell us about like I guess like the behind the scenes or like the story that has not been told about how you're becoming like the voice of Gen Z and discussing many of the most pertinent issues.
So originally, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. So I was probably, God, maybe a little bit older than kind of nine, but I maybe around 12, 13 was when iCoolKid kind of started. But you're right to say that I had the idea when I was about 8, 9, 10, because I was at like a day school and when you kind of a day school on Monday morning, the teacher always says like, what happened on the weekend? And I would always have done something quite fun and quite cool because I was quite interested in doing cool things on my time. Whereas a lot of my mates would have kind of not really done a huge amount, which is nothing against that. You choose how you want to spend your time. But my mates would have kind of just sat on the sofa or watched sports or whatnot. And then over time, people would start to ask me, like, what are you doing this weekend? Because it became a kind of a common pattern that I would have something quite fun to do over the weekend. And then as that started to become a more common question, I started to kind of jump the gun and I say, hey guys, here's what I'm doing this weekend. Do you want to come join? And then my mum started reaching out to other people's parents, being like, hey, does your kid want to come to this? And then as that started to kind of expand and grow almost into this weekly newsletter about here's some things that your kids can do over the weekend that me and my mum would kind of write. And then we realized that it's not really, and this was before TikTok, and this was before TikTok mostly. So there wasn't really a place where young people, like super young people, like kids, had a space to find cool stuff to do in London, at least. So then that was when we had the idea for iCoolKid, and that was literally just cool stuff to do in London that's safe and kid friendly. Then, as that started to grow, we started to gain a lot of traction. As I started to get older, we kind of hit 16, 15, 16 years old. And this was around COVID time. And I realized that the world was in a really awful place. This was like peak BLM, especially in the UK. And COVID was awful. And I realized, look, some people are making huge differences and they're starting from nothing. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple thousand followers on Instagram at the time, which was felt like quite a lot. And I had a bit of traction to this blog I call It about what's cool to do in London. I want to use that to make a difference. And then that's when we transitioned to Thread. So Thread.com got launched in about 2020. And the idea behind that was I don't think that any one person could change the world at the time, but I think that if you wanted to really make an impact, the way to do that is by inspiring other people to make their local areas better and create local positive change. And if you can do that over a global scale, you can create global change. So the idea behind Thread originally was shine a limelight on the people doing good things in their area and combine that with news and advice and guidance on how to do good things in your area. And then hopefully you would inspire and educate people to do good things and you would create this kind of domino effect of social change, hopefully with the idea that it would make a difference. And then because I did that at 16, then that also gained a bit of traction. I kind of did all the speaking circuits, like the young entrepreneurship speaking circuits. And from that, I got a lot of attention from far older people who are in their respective marketing or advertising or consulting departments of their companies. And they would kind of approach me and be like, look, you seem to kind of understand young people. You seem to have your ear on the ground. We're really struggling to reach Gen Z. Can you help us out? And this became a really common theme. So then I realized after a couple of years of just being in publishing about social change, I realized that like this consulting gig this is pretty serious. And I kind of was helping people behind the scenes, not really as Thread, but more just as Jenk. And then I realized like we need to get into consulting. So then that was when we launched Thread Media, which was probably about 2.5, maybe verging on 3 years ago. And we've been consulting ever since, helping brands reach young people, helping to explain to them social change. So social change still kind of forms a strong identity of what we do in from media. But yeah, helping brands reach young people and bridging the gap, basically.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really, I mean, it's just like it's kind of crazy because you go way back like and it kind of like evokes memories as you were talking about like your childhood and just looking around for things to do. And I also like to comment on, I guess, like the idea that you can do change locally where you are, and that's if that happens on a global scale, that's impactful. I mean, I completely like that's kind of like I have tried to do like AI literacy lessons at local schools because that's something that I was passionate about, and I think like I myself, I know I can't do something across all 50 states or across the whole world, but if something like that, I think that's how movements are created, and so it's really inspiring that you are putting the work out there that people are doing across because that's really I guess if you can gain traction with what's going on across the whole world, then that's how you continue to start and inspire people to keep pushing for change.
You've hit the nail on the head. You get it.
Yeah, I guess like another thing that I wanted to discuss was I'm sure along the way, like I know you mentioned your mom, for example, in the previous question. But there's definitely, I'm assuming at least people that like have helped you throughout your journey. Like I, for example, have had certain mentors that like who have helped me over the course of the past couple years, specifically like in the AI field, for example. So I guess like from since when you started everything with iCoolKid all the way through Thread Media and up until now, like who are your mentors that have like I guess helped you really understand how this entire world of like media, marketing and everything works?
God, I think there's no one specifically like famous that I can give you as an example, but it's I've just taken experience from all the kind of I mean, definitely my mum for sure, because she's kind of super knowledgeable, massively kind of supportive, and she still works with me to this day. So definitely her, but I think it's come from little nuggets of information I've taken from all industries and all aspects of my life, and I've used them to kind of help me in different ways. For example, like I used to do a lot of acting. And I've taken a lot of, and for example, I would say that one of my mentors used to be my old acting coach, and he's helped me massively in the sense that now I do a lot of public speaking and I feel a lot more confident on stage than I would have done without a lot of his mentorship or advice. And then likewise, it may be my mum's friends in various industries who I used to speak to, or my teachers. So I think I wouldn't say that I have any like specific industry-wide mentors, but I've been really kind of conscious to take nuggets from every aspect of life and use them wherever I can.
Got it. And I guess another area that's important to cover in like specifically for Gen Z is like the job market and that's where I know one of the questions that we were discussing before was specifically about how Gen Z is going to be impacted in like the AI world. So like as Gen Z is increasingly entering the workforce, a lot of teens are worried that like AI is going to take their jobs or even potentially replace them. So with AI developing at like light speed, this seems to be like a increasingly real possibility. How do you think AI is going to like reshape workforces and even the skills that Gen Z should develop heading forward?
Okay, look, take a step back for a second. Like a couple of years ago, before the huge boom of AI, we already knew that 80% of the jobs needed in 2030's economy hadn't been created in scale yet. And that's still true to this day, that 80% of the jobs needed for that economy haven't been created in scale. So this idea that AI is going to like scaring people out of a job is we already knew that the job landscape was going to change massively. The job landscape over the last 10 years has flipped on its head. This is just like the next progression of it. So I definitely don't think it's a matter of no one's going to be able to find a job. It's a matter of we need to be able to adapt to the new jobs that are coming with it. In the same way that when Excel was released in whatever it was in 1990 something, accountants thought they wouldn't have a job anymore because it did exactly what an accountant does. And now we have that, admittedly on a far bigger scale, but we have the same thing where it's just a shift in the jobs as opposed to the jobs have gone entirely. And I think what the biggest skill now is going to be is it's going to be the people that succeed who are young are going to be the ones who are able to find and build the skills necessary to compete in the job market 5 years from now, as opposed to the job market now. So effectively, young people like it's almost like a sport trying to stack as many skills on top of each other, and we're seeing this as the value of university degrees are declining. We're seeing that LinkedIn courses, Coursera, Udemy, Maven, Masterclass, all of these like democratized education platforms where you could, like e-learning platforms, hugely popular industry. And we're seeing that people are stacking these skills and courses. People are learning how to code. People are learning how to use graphic design, how to animate, how to 3D print. And literally, people are learning everything because of how hard the job market is getting. So the people that succeed are going to be the ones that are able to skill stack and predict where the jobs are moving to.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, like I've done courses on platforms like Coursera or like edX in the past, and I know many friends that have also done the same thing. And I think that's probably like you can't really go and take classes in every single thing in person, and I think that's might not be efficient in all cases. So I think online learning has become extremely popular, as you've stated. One thing that is also interesting in this is like if people are kind of worried that AI is going to take their job, like. I guess one perspective that we need to consider is like, what about like people using AI? Because just like, for example, how accountants might use Excel now to do things that they previously did on paper, like, do you think in a lot of fields, like using AI is going to become important for jobs?
I think it's already important. Like I'm every day I'm talking to I mean, even today for the first time I was out of my depth, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty on top of this kind of stuff. But I sit down every morning with sorry, I keep on pointing over here because this is where
Oh,
they
you're good.
sit.
Don't worry about
I'm
it.
in the office and they normally won't sit right there. But like I'll talk to them every morning, my social media and the creative content guy, and we'll say like, look, like what new AI has come out in the last week or day that we can now use to speed up our process and automate and become more efficient at what we're doing. And it's literally a new thing every single day. So being able to stay on top of it, hugely important. I've slightly distracted myself. Remind me what your question was again.
It was just like I mean, I guess you kind of answered it in that, but like how important are like AI skills going to be moving into the future for the job market?
I think super important. I think you're either going to be able to you're going to run with AI as or get crushed by it. And it's almost like it needs to become an assistant as opposed to a replacement. And you need to position yourself in a position where I'm in a position that can't be AI taken over, and I can use my AIs to do various different things. And this is like what makes agentic AI so powerful is that agentic AI can take over almost teams of people. Like you can ask an agentic AI, like, build me a website that does this, and then here's 10 photos of clothes,
I
and
get
then it
ads
will
for those.
build, yeah, it will build you a Shopify website. So something that there's like two levels there almost, which is by definition what makes it agentic. So learning how to use it and not be used by it is kind of the way that things need to be going.
I think the platform is called like Base 44 or something, but I've seen ads for it like literally every single day. If I watch a YouTube video, I'm guaranteed I'm gonna see an ad for that. So yeah, I mean, I think agentic AI and like with OpenAI and like if you're encoding, for example, like Cursor is huge. Like the agentic capabilities are already coming into place. They're still, I'd say, pretty latent, but I think like in due time, it's gonna get way more powerful to the point where like it can completely automate workflows. And I think that brings a good transition to like how we really reframe our education as a whole in light of AI. Because if you want people to develop these skills later on, I mean, I think at least some of it has to start like in grade school, in elementary and middle school. I mean,
Honestly, this is separate from AI entirely. I have a huge issue with the education system in general. Like
yeah,
the fact that we can speak to our grandparents and they study the same 10 subjects that we study today is absurd,
yeah.
considering that the idea of school is to prepare you for the world of employment. And employment in the last, again, ignoring AI, employment in the last 5 years is flipped on its head. The fact that half of the developed workforce, sorry, half the workforce in developed countries is going to be gig by 2027 is mind blowing within itself. So the fact that education hasn't prepared us for the level of hustle and the level of intensity that we're going to need to go into when the gig workforce effectively takes over is is insane. And the fact that education hasn't prepared you for that, big issue. And then you add in AI and you're like the education system
Yeah,
basically,
totally
which
get
is why
that.
I think these e-learning platforms are so important. I mean, for so many reasons, because they're teaching you the things that the government and syllabuses are too slow to change to teach you. And likewise, because it's so easy and easily accessible, like YouTube, how-to videos are still the most popular genre by quantity and quality in every measure on YouTube. People want to learn things. And the fact that you can learn basically an entire degree's worth of knowledge just because you have Wi-Fi anywhere in the world is massively democratizing. And that's another reason why it's so hard to find jobs now, is that anyone for an nth of the price can get the same knowledge that you have in your college degree through YouTube in twice the speed.
Yeah. And I guess like kind of transitioning from that.
Sorry, yeah, I kind of ranted over
Oh,
there,
you're
but
good. Don't worry about it. I think that that's really it's interesting because like I mean you yourself mentioned it, but like if even school itself, like college or like even K through 12 education, like it's increasingly getting questioned like what students are learning, what they need to be learning heading forward. And I think it would almost be interesting if there's some like from the perspective of like myself as a high school student, it's busy. Like, I mean, things are competitive. Like, you're encouraged to take difficult classes. There's no lying about that. I mean, it's almost as if there's not too much time where you can like go and explore these like the skills that you need to in terms of like coding or graphic design or something that you might actually apply. Like I think you can go to college and learn these things for sure, but I feel like a lot of the people that have like the most like the biggest upper hand are those that start early on in high school. And I think it would be really inspiring and helpful if those courses that are going to be like foundational in our future are taught more early on and encouraged for students. And maybe not the curriculums that, as you said, were being presented like 80 or 90 years ago to our grandparents that are still relevant today.
exactly. I completely agree. I think, yeah.
And so I think like when specifically in AI and learning, like the learning experience in the age of AI is a topic that's like brought up time and time again. And I think the reason behind that is because like students like to take shortcuts, and taking a shortcut might mean using AI or ChatGPT to do your homework or cheating on like an assignment. And like sure that might be an easy way out, but then like when a thing like a test comes up, it's obviously not going to work out. But I think forget about the test. It's a lot of it's about critical thinking. Like I feel like you're going to lose the ability to critically think. And I think there's a lot of studies coming out on that too, that people who use AI are putting in less thought into what they're doing compared to people that aren't. So I get that it's a huge efficiency factor, but how do you think AI should really be used in the classroom, if at all, by students?
So yeah, it's a really good question. So I'm 20 now, but ChatGPT came out in like probably the last 4 months of my time at high
So
school.
it's
So
when you were
I was in like
17, right?
year, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would have
Yeah.
been 17, just
Three
turned
years
18.
ago, almost exactly 3 years ago, actually. Yeah.
So that was kind of it was a weird stage for like us like just about discovering what was happening or what AI was. But that was a little anecdote. But yes, I think there is definitely a place for AI there has to be a place for AI in the learning place because there's no place for AI in the workforce. So you can't just pretend it doesn't exist and people are going to use it either way. But I think the way that you use it is, I think there's a couple different ways. One of the biggest ways that I use it is as a collector of information, but information that you feed it. For example, I mean, just the other day, if I can give ChatGPT 10 research reports about Gen Z trends, I can say, look, only, and this is crucial, only taking information from these 10 reports, please can you summarize them and tell me the most important points and copy the pie charts and tell me what I need to know. That equally can be done if you're a history major. You say, look, taking these 10 textbooks or taking these 10 battle logs or whatever happens to be. I didn't study history. Um, or so I think if you can limit, and because the issue in education, the issue comes where it just starts pulling random stuff and it starts making stuff up. So limiting that as a factor, super, super important. And doesn't really feel like it's cheating. It just makes your workflow more efficient because it's condensing information that you're giving it into one place for you. That's on the that's on like the learning end. On the teaching end, I think it's really, really good for a couple reasons. Duolingo became really impressive early on because it used machine learning where if I was learning Spanish and I got a verb wrong because I put something from the present tense to the past tense, it would give me another question with a verb that was easily confused between present and past because it knows that I got it wrong in the first place and it gave me another one to see if I keep getting it wrong. And that originally was machine learning and it would basically have millions of questions and it would say, if he's getting this type of question wrong, give him more of that same type until he learns to get it right. Now with ChatGPT and AI, you don't have to have a bank of a million questions. But if you're a math teacher, you can say, look, Jimmy's getting algebra wrong. So my AI is going to feed Jimmy's homework 100 algebra questions until he gets them all right. Likewise, John is really bad at trigonometry, so my AI is going to determine that and then realize that I need to give John 100 trigonometry questions. So there is definitely positive use for AI in learning, both on the student and the teacher end.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what I was looking for, I guess. It's comprehensive and it covers it from both aspects. I guess transitioning out of like AI and education into more so like I want to look at like trends across like different generations. I know that's something that you yourself have done a lot of work on. I mean, I like to see you as like almost an intergenerational bridge, and I mentioned that in the introduction as you're working with like Gen Z, but also like a lot of people in like the corporate space who are obviously much older than us. So
Yeah.
do you think like Gen like and a lot of the times like and I know it's like changing culture and things like that is a huge part of why Gen Z and like older generations don't see eye to eye on many things nowadays. But like what do you think Gen Z doesn't understand about older cultures and what do like older cultures not really understand about Gen Z sometimes?
I'm going to start with the second one because it's a lot easier to answer.
Okay.
Well, actually, maybe this answers both kind of ways. I think generations are generally very similar. And I think that the issues where older people are like Gen Z is so woke or Gen Z's like generalizations don't come about because of generations. They come about because of the things that the generation is given and the time period that they're in. In the same way that, okay, let's say like this idea of like Gen Z is super woke. We're not actually that woke as far as generations go. We're really not. In the same way that it's just because Gen Z happens to fall in this time frame of 16 to call it 26, 28-year olds. So say 16 to 28-year olds. That group of people, which so happens to be Gen Z now, and in 10 years' time it will be Gen Alpha, those people are always the wokest because they want to build the society that they grow up into. So we are just happen to be the age right now, which are the age of the change makers and the hustlers and like the disruptors. Because we're a bit like, you know what? We're fed up with the older generation and what they've left us with. Let's make our own, whatever it is. Let's make our own banks. That's where you get Monzo and things like that. Like, let's change the things that we've been given to work for us so that we can grow into the future with these things and we build the society that we grow up into. Pardon me. Then when you combine that with the fact that we're the first generation to have tools like social media, we have the loudest megaphone in terms of social media that any generation has had. But it only seems like we're more woke because of how loud we are and how loud we're able to be. If you look at social change movements from the past however many, like hundreds of years, if you look at the suffragette movement, the people leading the suffragette movement, they were also 16 to 28 years old. And if you look at all of the big social change movements and the big disruptors, they've always been that age. It just so happens that Gen Z is that age, that the disrupting age, with the loudest megaphone possible. So then you look at that and you say, oh, they're the wokeness, but we're not. Um, Likewise, the other way around, Gen Z thinks that the generations above them were super, super lazy and left them in a pretty shit position that they kind of just had to deal with, both with the environment, the economy, politics. We're kind of like, look, we've been dealt a crappy hand. Again, we haven't. It's just a matter of what how the world looked when they were our age, and then what was important to them, and then what they've done and build the society that they grew up into. We're now suffering the consequences. So I think there's a massive sense of not seeing things from the other person's point, or the other generation's point of view.
Yeah. And that almost makes me think like, and especially towards the end of your answer, I was like thinking about how like maybe early 1900s or mid 1900s, you might like the cars you'd see would be if you show them now, people would think like they're like collectibles and things like that. So it's like you went from that to like having an economy where you can literally get anything at any point in at least like in developed countries and many developing nations are also obviously starting to get better every single year and like adopting the practices that developed countries already have maybe a couple years or a couple decades in the past. So I think like because if you think about it like in the 1920s, 19 early 1900s like if you didn't have an industrial revolution would we even have anything that we have now? Probably not. And I think like that's what your point is really speaking to in a way that we've come such a far way now. And it's like now our turn to define what needs to change for what we perceive as like the betterment of the world.
If you look at the Industrial Revolution, the people leading that were it wasn't the 50 and 60-year-olds. It was the people who were like the builders and like the disruptors, and they're the ones who make the difference because they're the ones who are going to live with the consequences of their actions, and they
Exactly.
want to see the positive consequences. So yeah, there you go.
And I think like a perfect way like to think about what teams want to do is like they're so energetic about every single thing. And like I think like we think almost we can do anything we want. And it's so teens have a lot of ideas, like energy and like idealism, especially when it comes to things like environmental and economic issues. One major problem is that we often like lack funding or like the means to actually make our dreams or what we want to do happen. So how can teens and young people get to like financing and actually like meeting the people that can help their ideas come to life?
Oh, in what sense? In like a in for sorry, can you just, like give an example as in do you mean like entrepreneurially or do you
Yeah,
mean
yeah, yeah, entrepreneurially, or like let's say you're trying to start a nonprofit organization, that like I mean I don't really for anything. I mean, like I guess you could take education as an example, like maybe for like we've been talking about like e-learning courses, so like maybe like expanding the accessibility of these courses free of cost across the country, for example, things like that. Let's say that's an idea you have. Like, how do you get these ideas financed and known?
I think it's actually less hard than people realize. And admittedly, also I'm biased saying this, but the cost of fail, I think, okay, let's take a step back. I think all of these aspects are entrepreneurial in a sense because to make the change in whatever industry you want to make the change in, it has to start from an idea. And that is by nature of being an entrepreneur is building on man and creating and realizing an idea that you have and then executing on it. So for any industry, it kind of starts on entrepreneurial level. Um, I think that's a lot easier than people realize, and for a couple of reasons. The advent of cloud computing has massively uh, stabilized the amount of cost it takes to think of like rent servers. All of like the rigmarole and the red tape that would have been necessary to start a company 10 years ago, it's really a fraction of it only exists now. To the point where failing now is a tenth the cost that it used to be 10 years ago, a website specifically, or an app. So if you have an idea and you execute on it, you can start and fail 10 times for the same cost as one person starting one website and then closing one website 10 years ago. I mean, so I think it's a lot easier than people realize. I think the excuse that it's too hard or to have enough time is still valid in some cases. I'm not saying it's not, but I think it's less valid than it used to be as a reason why you feel like you can't make change.
For sure. I mean, I think like, and even with AI coming into place now, like creating things has become
And
so,
with the AI,
yeah,
exactly. Now you can ask an
it's,
agentic how to build your website. You don't even need to
yeah,
know how to do that.
it's kind of crazy because like there's people are using AI to build AI. Like, I'm sure you've heard of Perplexity, right? Like the search engine. So like their CEO Arvind Srinivas, like he pointed out that like let's say they want a quick change to come, like I guess like so like, this is the example he gave. I think it's he'll take his phone, he'll pull up the Perplexity app or his computer or whatever and say, hey, I don't like the way that this looks. An hour later the web dev team comes back and fixes that using like cursors, agentic AI workflows. So it's just like it's crazy that even the AI companies themselves are developing with AI tools. I think that really speaks to how powerful it is when it comes to making things happen quickly, efficiently, and yeah. Last thing I guess I want to talk about is like what your plans. I mean, you've like I've looked into a lot of the stuff that you've done, and you're like a 20-year-old with as much experience as like maybe a 40 or 50-year-old, at least the way that I see it. So I guess like what are your plans? Like I mean, you've talked about acting before. I don't know, maybe politics or what do you want to do, I guess, going into the
Yo,
future?
honestly, I think it's still gonna. I really want to keep this idea of helping bridge the generational gap because I think this idea that we're losing a lot of big companies to younger companies because people are just slow to change in general. And I'm sure that when I'm 50 and 60, I'll also be slow to change. But I think I want to spend as long as I can while I'm as young as I am helping bridge the gap to allow these big historic brands to maintain relevance. And it's because like watching things like for example like Barclays, watching Barclays slowly deteriorate. Barclays is like the UK equivalent of like
Yeah, I bank.
yeah, it's a bank.
Yeah.
So watching, but it's like an old school like like your mum and dad would
Yeah.
have a Barclays account. Um, Watching that slowly deteriorate because we have things like, and again, I don't know if this is a UK example, but like Monzo and Revolut, like these challenger banks are driving these old school names into the ground in the same way that like Eventbrite is being driven into the ground by apps like Dice and RA and Skiddle. These are all like events companies. If you don't, these, I don't know actually if these are in the UK. If these are
I
only,
yeah, I've heard of Eventbrite, of course. Some of the other ones I don't think so, but I mean I get the
yeah.
purpose.
So effectively, Dice and Fixer and Skiddle and stuff like and RA are all they're like challengers started by young people. Specifically, I think they're all started at various universities and they're events platforms and they're taking away massively from people like Eventbrite. And we're seeing the same thing in clothing and we're seeing the same thing in every industry. So I think the future is just helping these big brands bridge the gap into young people because I think we're really easily accessible. We're look scary from the outside because of this idea that we like have a megaphone and this idea of like cancel culture. No one really wants to like mess up with young people. So I think bridging the gap and helping brands reach young people is the goal.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion, and there's so many things that we explored, so it was awesome. Of
Thank you so much.
course.